how to resolve the Northern Ireland border issue. And by accepting EU rules on goods and food, she thinks she's solved it. Is she right? Join me now to discuss. The Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary, Tony Lloyd. Mr Lloyd, a very good morning to you. We've all had a couple of days now to digest that which has emerged from Chequers. What did you make of it?
Well, we've not really had a couple of days to digest it, because until we have the white paper published, it's really going to be very difficult to know everything that's in there. But there are a couple of things that are very obvious. This is a political fudge, and without pushing that analogy too far, that's no better than any other kind of fudge. It was designed, and not very successfully, I think, to keep the Conservative Party together, not to pursue the nation's interest. And there are two issues. Obviously, one is the question of the hard border. It's simply not obvious that that's been solved. And the second thing, of course, is the very real issue around security. When we've had warnings from Cressida Dick, the head of the Metropolitan Police Force, warnings from George Hamilton, the Chief Constable of the Police Service in Northern Ireland, about the need on security grounds to get the right deal with our EU partners as we leave. So within that, a political fix, fine to keep the show on the road, not good enough for this country of ours.
So in terms of the agreement that was met on, for example, freedom of movement, what appears to be a common market for goods, that chimes with Labour's position then?
No, it doesn't. It would be great if Theresa May had recognised almost the inexorable logic of why, in the end, Britain will have to end up in the position that Labour's put forward. What we've still got is this really rather bizarre promise of some technological fix that nobody as yet believes can be made to work, where goods coming into this country will be differentiated from those travelling through Britain into the rest of the European Union. Nobody knows how that can be done, and that's why we've already had words from different parts of industry and commerce warning that we're not there yet. Now, obviously, if Theresa May is genuinely on a journey in the right direction, that's great, but can she drag the rest of the Conservative Party with her? Because that really, frankly, is the difficult issue. We want this country of ours to be in a proper customs union with the European Union into the future. That's in the interests of no hard border in Ireland. It's actually, frankly, though, in the interests of trade in goods for the rest of the United Kingdom. Constituencies like my own in the north of England does need that no hard border across the English Channel, as well as no hard border across the island of Ireland. We're not there yet.
But just in terms of your brief, I mean, what exactly, in your mind, is the problem with the solution that's been found, this kind of common trade area? It appears to tick all the boxes.
I don't think it does, though, does it? What we've got still is a situation that's going to rely on a kind of technology that doesn't yet obviously exist. What it seems that is still being said is that somehow we can differentiate between goods travelling to and fro through Britain into the European Union. Of course, that's into the Irish Republic from the north of Ireland. It's not really yet obvious that that's compatible with what Theresa May's put forward. Now, within that as well, there is another major issue on this. Is the European Union going to be prepared to negotiate on this basis? Because that's a fundamental issue as well. What we do know is that if we were saying that we'd be part of a customs union, equivalent to the customs union that now exists, we could guarantee that goods could travel across the border in Northern Ireland, but frankly, could travel across any other border between the rest of the UK and the Netherlands, France, etc. That's actually what the whole of the UK needs, but it's most certainly what no hard border in Ireland needs. Otherwise, we've got to heed the warnings that hard border is potentially devastating for the progress that's been made across the island of Ireland and for the rest of us in the UK over the last 20 years. We can't put that at risk.
I mean, do you agree with your colleague Keir Starmer that there could potentially be a second referendum?
I don't think Keir Starmer has said that. I listened to him very carefully this morning. I think most of us are probably of the view, and when I say most of us, most people in this country, that obviously we need the meaningful vote in Parliament. Parliament should be able to say when Theresa May comes back that the deal is an acceptable one. She's going to have trouble with her own ultra-Brexiteers.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr Lloyd, but I don't quite understand. I mean, here is what Sir Keir said. It is Parliament, as you were saying, that should decide what happens next. It should have the power to decide the options, and this might involve a general election or a people's vote.
He did say that. It could involve. I think most of us, and this is the point I was going to make...
So it's an option that the Labour Party is keeping open at the moment?
I think the best option for this country at that point would be a general election, because this isn't something... It's such a complicated issue. What we need is a political party prepared to take power who has a very clear view of the nation's interests. That's obviously one that the Conservative Party, with all its divisions, can no longer do. Quite frankly, that's where a general election would be the right answer.
See, my problem with all of this, Mr Lloyd, is that I thought that Jeremy Corbyn had ruled it out.
A general election? I don't believe he's ruled out a general election.
The people's vote.
Labour has never committed itself to the people's vote, and I think those are the words that Keir Starmer used this morning. What he said was that Labour hasn't pursued that line or words to that effect, and that's where we are. I must say, I genuinely do believe the best vote would be a real people's vote, and that's a general election, because that is how the public, in toto, can make a decision on not simply the merits of the deal that comes back, but actually, importantly, the way we take forward a strategy and a policy that's in the interest of the people of the United Kingdom. We need a united government, and we've not got one with the present Conservative Party.
I mean, it strikes me, Mr Lloyd, that there's enough fudge around this morning to fill a sweet shop.
Well, there's certainly enough fudge been thrown around this weekend. I'm not quite sure. Explain to me where the fudge is in what I've said, and maybe I'll respond more clearly.
Jeremy Corbyn ruled out a people's vote. Keir Starmer says it's still on the table. Which is it?
What Jeremy Corbyn said just the other day is the best outcome at this would be a general election. That's what I'm saying again this morning. What Keir Starmer, you repeated, said is that it has not been part of Labour's thinking that there would be a second vote. What he went on to say is if Parliament decides that the deal is so unacceptable, clearly there's got to be a further mechanic. That further mechanic, my own preference, very clearly Jeremy Corbyn's preference, I think in the interest of the people of the United Kingdom, would be a general election. And Keir Starmer also did talk about a general election. No fudge there. I think that's very clear.
Whilst we have you, Mr Lloyd, I just want to talk about the new anti-Semitism code that's been adopted by the Labour Party. It excludes a number of behaviours which the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance say are anti-Semitic. Can you explain why it is people would no longer be punished within the Labour Party for saying that which Ken Livingstone did? Hitler was a Zionist.
Well, in fact, what Labour is most certainly committed to is that we'll match up to the standards of the International Holocaust Remembrance Association, because that is something that's been adapted and adopted throughout the length and breadth of this country of ours. What Labour's tried to do, though, on top of that, is to make it something that is applicable, that Labour can operationalise in the event of people breaching that standard. Now, within that, I'm clearly advised that that would include the situation of Ken Livingstone, for example.
Well, there are people who have been suspended from your party for saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, of course, Israelis are effing Nazis. Since this rule change, that would not be considered anti-Semitic by the Labour Party.
Well, I think it would. And the important point about this is that Labour is still in consultation with different Jewish organisations. Obviously, we've got to listen to what people are saying back to us. We've got to listen to what people are saying back to us and making sure that the standard we come up with is one that conforms to the standards of the IHRA, but importantly also allows us to operationalise that in practical terms, to take action where there's breach from that what isn't a high standard, what is an acceptable standard, to make sure that my own party, which has always had a very strong connection with British Jews, amongst other communities, is able to face the future and say we are a party committed to anti-Semitism. That's where we've got to get to, and that's where we will get to.
We've got a pretty famous visitor arriving in the United Kingdom next week, the President of the United States. Will you be participating in any of the protests, flying the odd blimp or two?
I don't think I'll be flying the odd blimp. What is clear is that Donald Trump is very unusual by standards of American presidents that we've dealt with in my lifetime, where we've had a very close relationship on the ways we think. But this is a Donald Trump who's abrogated standards around climate change, has kicked the really important Iran nuclear deal into touch. It's a president who is now talking about the possibility of downgrading NATO, of doing deals with a President Putin who, not that long since, has invaded parts of the Ukraine. He does cause great issues, great problems. I think it's really important that our government, Theresa May, is making it very clear that there are limits to our own capacity to work with the president, who is so out of kilter with what Britain, but actually the rest of those countries who historically have been part of the Western alliance, the Western way of thinking, are committed to. I hope Donald Trump will now seriously listen and not simply respond to what he sees as the domestic pressures on him in the United States. The world is bigger than simply small parts of the US, and we've got to make sure that we've got that conversational relationship with the American president.
Mr. Lloyd, it looks a lovely day in Manchester. We'll let you go and enjoy it. Many thanks for being with us.
And thanks to you.